Welcome to Regional Recovery Follow-Up Fundamentals Module 5, Document and Wrap-Up. In this module, you will learn the importance of documenting client and event information for follow-up in CAS 2.0, and how to accurately use the Narrative and Documentation Guide Job tool. You will also learn about the final steps when wrapping up with the client. Throughout this module, we will use scenario questions to ensure you understand what you have just learned. You will have 10 seconds to think about the question and determine your answer. After 10 seconds, we'll show you the correct answer so you can compare your answer with ours. As you work through the follow-up conversation, you will be documenting the answers to questions, referrals made, outcomes, advocacy, and follow-up steps. Enter all of this directly in CAS 2.0 while you are talking to your client. Documenting in CAS 2.0 will help you to keep the conversation on track and make sure you are gathering all the information you need to quickly provide the resources and support your client's recovery. Documenting in CAS 2.0 right away also helps the client in their next conversation or contact with a follow-up caseworker. When everything is documented accurately, the client won't need to repeat information, and we can track steps completed and next steps. Then we can be sure each client received all appropriate services and assistance. The fiscal reviewer and the casework supervisor will check each case record for this purpose. For quality assurance in all chapters, regions, and divisions, we use CAS data to compile statistical reports across all cases to see how accurately and appropriate the service has been, and to find areas for improvement. Let's revisit the job tools that will help you with follow-up procedures and remind you about what you need to document in the client record. Keep the Casework and Recovery Planning Toolkit as a favorite on your browser and download or print the job tools you'll use regularly. The Caseworker Follow-Up Checklist walks through each follow-up step that you learned in this course. It explains which fields you should complete in CAS 2.0 at each step. As a reminder, log in to Volunteer Connection, then select Connect to the Exchange. Enter Casework and Recovery in the search box to find the Casework and Recovery Planning Toolkit and look under the Follow-Up section. The Caseworker Follow-Up Roadmap also walks through each follow-up step you learned about. This roadmap closely aligns with the follow-up conversation you have with your client. It will ensure you cover all key areas in the conversation to support your client's recovery planning while also documenting in CAS 2.0. Use the Supplemental DCA Roadmap to guide you through the steps for assessing all clients who received immediate BDCA to see if they also qualify for Supplemental DCA. The Narrative and Documentation Guide will help you know what you must document and what you may document as needed, and what you must never document in the client record. There are specific guidelines on what information you should include for follow-up and recovery planning. Do you recall what you should and should not document in the case narrative? Listen to each of these phrases and decide if it belongs in the Document in Case Narrative or Never Document in Case Narrative box. Neighbor says client was arrested. Dog will stay at the pet hotel. Client is not a U.S. citizen. Client thinks she may be pregnant. Client needs access to home for vehicle keys and wallet. You should include information like dog will stay at the pet hotel and client needs access to home for vehicle keys and wallet in the case narrative. You should never document information like neighbor says client was arrested, client is not a U.S. citizen, and client thinks she may be pregnant in the case narrative. When you read the case before contacting the client, you are looking for details to understand the client's current situation so you can be prepared with questions and information to find the right resources for this client. You are also looking for any errors in the case noted by the casework supervisor in the case narrative or by the fiscal reviewer on the Case Review tab. Check to see if the client received immediate B DCA so you are prepared to assess for supplemental DCA. When you begin recovery planning with your client, you are completing the data in CAS, including demographics and missing data from the initial interview. You are documenting notes in the case narrative and identifying recovery gaps and recovery roadblocks. As gaps are identified, you are working on problem solving and providing referrals. While doing this, you are documenting on the Referrals VSP tab and adding notes to the case narrative on the Client tab. If you are asked to advocate for your client, check the Client Consent to Share information choices, or change the selection if your client declined to share information at the initial interview, but has now made another choice. Note the advocacy in the case narrative also. Next, for clients with immediate B DCA, you are completing the steps to assess qualifications for supplemental DCA and documenting the answers in CAS 2.0. Step 1 is documenting the recovery gap that is holding back their recovery. Step 2 is verifying their personal resources have been depleted, verifying all referrals and community assistance options are inadequate, and identifying and checking each roadblock that exists. If you do not know whether they have a recovery roadblock, ask your client about the ones left blank and check each one that applies. If the recovery gap still hasn't been filled, the client qualifies. So continue to step 3 by making a recommendation for supplemental DCA. Follow local procedures to be sure a supervisor knows the case is waiting for a supervisor decision. If your recommendation requires an RDO exception, then make a note in the case narrative and contact a supervisor. Finally, for all cases with a supplemental DCA option recommended, check in CAS 2.0 to see whether the supplemental DCA recommendation was approved or declined. Contact your client and determine next steps. Once your client no longer needs Red Cross services and the case has an initial casework supervisor review, you can move the case status to Review. Now, it's time to wrap up the conversation with your client. When wrapping up the conversation, summarize the steps covered today. Let the client know the amount of funds remaining on their client assistance card and remind them that these funds must be used within 60 days of the day they receive the card. Mention that ATM instructions came in the card's envelope. Discuss and record the client's to-do steps concisely in the case narrative. Remind the client of any time-sensitive information tasks or forms that might need to be completed soon. Ask if the client would like additional follow-up contact. If so, note the preferred method by phone or email in the narrative and set the case follow-up priority. If the client says no, they do not need follow-up or any other Red Cross services, add to your narrative note. Client states they will be able to recover without further Red Cross assistance. When ending the conversation, remind your client to contact the chapter or region with any questions, and not a caseworker directly, as you will not always be available. Clients should never have your personal phone number. Let the client know that they may receive information by email from a caseworker. Also, a Red Cross survey by text message may come in the next few weeks about the help they have been given. Let them know that we hope they will take a few minutes to reply. The Red Cross wants to make sure each of our clients receives excellent service. Finally ask, is there anything else I can do today to help you reach your recovery goal and support you as you move forward? Wish the client well and say goodbye. At this point, you should have checked that you entered information for this conversation into the client's record in CAS 2.0 and clicked Submit. Contact a supervisor to request any needed action, bring an issue or a supplemental direct client assistance recommendation or an RDO exception request to your supervisor's attention. Your chapter and region are measured on key metrics from CAS 2.0 to ensure we are providing complete and appropriate services to every client. Remember, after you document recovery gaps and recovery roadblocks, you must select a supplemental DCA recommendation for all clients who received immediate BDCA. Review the CAS 2.0 case record. Review your case narrative to make sure there are no errors remaining. Enter your name and today's date and select the follow-up status to Follow-up Successful on the Follow-up tab in CAS 2.0. Delete or shred any notes, either on paper or electronic, with client information you made outside of CAS 2.0. You will continue to protect your client's information by talking about the case with others only on a business need-to-know basis, when this sharing benefits the client or is a required financial control procedure. Helping clients with their recovery plan, listening to their difficult and stressful stories, and trying to map out a plan with them can be challenging. And then there are those times it gets even harder. Some clients have a number of recovery roadblocks and life challenges. Take a deep breath. When you finish a client call, reach out and talk about your tough cases with your casework mentor, supervisor, or your chapter or regional leader. This is for your support and also to protect your client's confidentiality. It isn't appropriate to discuss your client socially. Ask yourself, what difference did I just make? What impact am I making in this client's recovery? How is their situation better because I've been a part of it? Asking yourself these questions not only affirms the amazing work you're doing, it helps to see where you still need to improve. Reach out to your mentor or supervisor anytime you need advice, guidance, or just someone to listen. Our disaster mental health team is also available to support disaster action team members and caseworkers. Don't hesitate to accept support yourself after you've been a calm, compassionate, and constructive help to your client. Through your follow-up casework, you will help your clients bridge the gap, moving forward from their immediate needs to disaster recovery with the services you provided: recovery planning, problem solving, referrals, and advocacy. You will empower and support your clients at a challenging time, helping them make meaningful recovery progress following their disaster. That's it for Module 5, Document and Wrap Up. In this module, we review the importance of documenting client and event information during follow-up in CAS 2.0 and how to accurately use the Narrative and Documentation Guide Job tool. You also learned about the final steps when wrapping up with the client. Congratulations! You've completed Regional Recovery Follow-up Fundamentals. The goal of this course was to provide you, as follow-up caseworkers, with the skills and tools you will need to effectively and efficiently provide follow-up casework and recovery planning services to your clients, helping to bridge the gap from disaster to full recovery. In Module 1, Get Ready for Recovery Planning, you learned the purpose and role of follow-up in the client's recovery timeline and casework and recovery planning services as a whole. In Module 2, Recovery Planning, you learned how to effectively offer recovery planning and problem-solving support during follow-up. You also learned when to obtain supervisor approval and request Regional Disaster Officer Exception approval for corrections and Direct Client Assistance recommendations. In Module 3, Problem-Solving, Referrals, and Advocacy, you learned how to provide referrals to community assistance organizations and know when to advocate on a client's behalf with organizations and how to document referrals in CAS 2.0. You also learned about when it is appropriate to share personally identifiable information and how to protect client confidentiality, as well as when to contact your supervisor or mentor. In Module 4, Supplemental DCA Qualifications and RDO Exceptions, you learned how to assess need and qualification for Supplemental Direct Client Assistance and the purpose of an RDO exception approval, when it is needed, and the approval procedures. In Module 5, Document and Wrap Up, you learned the importance of documenting client and event information for follow-up in CAS 2.0 and how to accurately use the Narrative and Documentation Guide Job tool. You also learned about the final steps when wrapping up with the client. With the completion of this recovery curriculum and an active CAS account, you are prepared to support your client's recovery planning on regional single and multifamily events and Level 3 disaster relief operations. You have met the training requirements to work with shelter residents after you attend a shelter casework orientation your supervisor leads. Talk with your supervisor about your group activity position or gap in Volunteer Connection. Is it up to date? Thank you for completing this course and for your valuable work supporting our clients after their disaster. The following slide contains photo credits.